faith, the Apostle Paul once wrote, "One person plants, another waters, but God gives the growth. The one who plants and the one who waters have a common purpose, and you are God's field, God's building. One person lays a foundation, another person builds on it, and the whole structure is built on the firm foundation of Christ." So here we are, people of hope, marking a milestone that is literally centuries in the making, ready to bloom and grow in the next season of our history, with roots that go down deep into Indiana County soil. This is a day both to celebrate and give thanks. But how did we get here? Well, our story really does go all the way back to an early Sunday morning when women came running from an empty grave with the news that Jesus, the crucified rabbi whose body had been laid in the tomb on the Friday before, was alive again, risen from the dead and loose in the world. We are a part of an astoundingly long chain of relay race runners who all go back to that sprint on resurrection morning. The message of the women on that day, that Christ is risen, birthed a movement that became the community of Easter people we call the church. Since then, a lot of things have happened in the last 2,000 years. Like, a lot. We Lutheran Christians trace our part of the story through this guy, another older brother in the faith named Martin Luther, who started a renewal movement 15 centuries after that resurrection day to remind people that if we actually read the scriptures on their own terms, we'd discover they are chock full of utterly good news about God's audacious and unabashed grace in the same Jesus that the women were running from the tomb to tell about. Some people listened to Luther and to other reformers like him who were popping up across the church in those days, and they took him up on his dare to read the scriptures and to be surprised by the amazing love of God in Christ. They took the name evangelical, which just means good news people, and also sometimes got labeled Lutherans because, again, of this guy, who had been the one to point them back to the good news in the first place. When Lutheran Christians came to this country, they brought their faith in Christ, their devotion to worship God around the Word, the table, and the font, and their commitment to love their neighbors. And when they moved to new places, they brought their faith and found ways to gather around the same good news that had sustained their ancestors for centuries before. Of course, eventually, one of those new places was in what they used to call the wilds of Indiana County, Pennsylvania. As the Reverend J. Milton Snyder recounts in his 1901 History of the Brush Valley Lutheran Church, the first Lutherans to settle in this area go back to the 1790s, when the first Lutheran families who located in our county would gather for worship in homes. In those earliest years, pastors could only be present to lead worship 4 or 5 times a year in any location, so when the first Lutheran worship was held in the early 1800s in Brush Valley, it was with sporadic leadership. In the years 1813 and 1814, more regular pastoral presence was possible. A log building was erected for use as a church for the Lutherans at Brush Valley, and the congregation was first organized. Its worship services and preaching were entirely in German. English would not be introduced at all until the 1820s or 1830s. The deed conveying the land for this Lutheran church in Brush Valley bears the date of 1822. 200 years ago. That building is remembered as the earliest Lutheran church in Indiana County. The church building in the borough of Indiana would not be completed until 1830, a full 8 years later. The original log building was located in the old graveyard. In his history, Reverend Snyder reports this description. Members of the congregation cut and hewed most of the logs as well as assisted in the building of the church. Chunking and daubing were placed in between the logs, and hewed logs pinned to the sleepers by wooden pins made the floor. 2 windows were on each side of the building, having 4 or 6 small panes of glass. The size of the church was about 16 or 18 feet in width, about 22 or 24 feet in length. The first pews were made of hewn slabs similar to benches. At first, for heating, they used the old open-fire hearth and log fire. 50 years from the founding of Brush Valley Lutheran Church, a congregation was forming in Homer City, just 6 miles away. On February 21st, 1871, Trinity Lutheran Church of Homer City was organized by Dr. R.A. Fink, then president of the Allegheny Synod, with 28 charter members, the majority of whom were from Luther Chapel Choral, a congregation formed in the 1840s. The local newspaper of the day, the Indiana Progress, records a notice in 1873 of its official incorporation. Notice is hereby given that the petition for the incorporation of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Homer City has been filed in my office and will be presented at the June term for final decree. A.C. Boyle, Prothonotary. On May 19, 1878, Trinity Homer City joined with Luther Chapel Choral into a shared ministry served by a single pastor. In 1922, 100 years ago, Trinity Homer City and Luther Chapel were joined by Brush Valley Lutheran Church into a three-point parish. The present building in which Hope worships was originally a frame structure, completed and dedicated by Pastor Snyder on October 6, 1872. In July 1952, the old frame building was faced with colonial red brick, the old belfry was replaced, and the roof was redone. Between 1954 and 1964, the narthex was renovated and a pastor's office was put in. During the 1980s, Brush Valley and Trinity were part of the Town and Country Lutheran Ministry Initiative and were served, along with several other congregations, by a team of pastors and interns. In 1994, Trinity Lutheran Church, Homer City, and Brush Valley Lutheran Church, Brush Valley, merged to become Hope Lutheran Church. The groundwork for the merger was laid during the tenure of Pastor John Wood. Since then, Hope has been in a shared ministry with New Life Lutheran Church, a congregation in northern Indiana County near Marion Center, which was also the product of three congregations merging together. The first pastor to serve the two newly formed congregations was Reverend Sandra Kennedy, now the Reverend Dr. Sandra Jones.
My name's Marge Falcomer. You all know who I am. I started out with the Brush Valley Lutheran Church, and my experience there was a good one. I was camping at Yellow Creek Campground, and the owners there were members. So a couple times when I didn't have church in my church, I went out there with them, and I must have liked it because I went again. The following summer, they brought the church services to the rec room at Yellow Creek Campground. And it was a good experience. And my first experience was with Louise Knotts. She was the intern pastor at the time, and it was her last sermon with us. And they had a party after the service, and I got caught flat-footed, and I realized what the little drummer boy must have felt like. I had no gift, and everybody else was giving gifts. So I just waited till everybody was done giving their gifts, and I said, I have no gift to give you, but I have a song. And so I picked up my good old camping guitar, and I had noticed on her tote bag the outline of the state of West Virginia and the words West Virginia. So John Denver has a song for every occasion. And so I picked up my guitar and I started singing Take Me Home Country Roads. And Louise came over, draped her arm across my shoulders, and sang in perfect harmony the whole song with me. And it was a memorable moment, and it sure was good for me because I didn't feel awkward, and she just made what could have been really an awkward moment into a pleasant, wonderful memory. And another moment was with Pastor Cindy Coleman. I don't know how many of you remember her, but she was kind of quiet. And somehow we got together and we got to talking, and she came over to my camper for supper, and we went out and did the grand tour of Yellow Creek Lake. As we got down towards the dam, I was going slower and slower because we saw something swimming. And all of a sudden the motor shut off, and Cindy looks at me and said, "Will it start again?" I said, "It always has." So we watched this little critter swimming in the water, and we were getting pretty close. And it got out, and it was a little fawn, couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 days old, on spindly, wobbly legs. Mama come over. Mama had been watching us all along. Mama come over, got her on the shore, and checked her out. They turned around, walked back in the woods, and there was another moment made. We started the engine back up and went on back to the campground. On her last sermon with the church that season, she mentioned all the things that people had done with her and the memories, and that little fawn was one of those memories. That was another good experience. I won't forget. They're great for me, and I hope this makes it good for you.
Hi, I'm Barb Waltermeyer. Some of you may remember me as Barb Bennett. I was asked to come today and share some of my memories of the merger. When I joined the Lutheran Church several years ago, I should make that 30 years ago, I was asked to join the council. Being that I was on the council, I was on the unit council, and I had gone to the Synod Assembly, so I had some experiences to what the church functions were. I didn't realize at the time that I was going to be asked to help make the merger happen with the 6 churches. Making 3 churches into one wasn't easy. We had good days and bad days. The merger between Trinity and Luther Chapel didn't go well. We found out that Luther Chapel and Trinity just didn't like each other, and neither one of them could tell us why. I asked them several times, and no one knew why. I actually told them they sounded like the Hatfields and McCoys, because no one knew each other or knew what the problem was. Eventually, after back and forth trying to get each other to cooperate, Luther Chapel walked out and said they weren't joining our merger. So it left 2 churches out of 3. Brush Valley really didn't have a choice on merging. They knew they had to. Our church wasn't going to be sufficient. It was going to need a lot of work done to it. So we knew we had to become part of Trinity. Trinity ended up changing its name, but Brush Valley changed its identity. We lost who we were. And it's hard to leave your home church and lose that small family that you had. You lose that home field, that fun that you have in the mornings, talking to each other. Kids would run back and ring the bell, or try to compete who was going to ring the bell. After services, all the kids would run on behind the altar, grab the bread, and share it, or try not to share it, and have fun that way. It eventually taught them that you can't take it out and throw in a garbage can. If you're going to take it outside, you have to share it with the birds. Those are the kind of things we lost when we merged. Coming to Trinity, event ended up being okay. We finally managed to make ourselves into a whole family. Leaving Brush Valley was hard on us. We thought that we were leaving behind an old building that was a historical building. We didn't know what was going to happen to it. I had checked with insurance companies, found out that insurance companies won't insure empty churches because they get vandalized. So we had a meeting with our church and to decide what was going to happen to our building. Well, lo and behold, some of the church members packed the pews with their families, and when the vote was counted, they took over the building for themselves, which shocked us all. But they formed their own congregation. And it turned out well. They actually lifted the whole building off the ground and put a complete basement under it. And they have made our little church in the country a really nice building. They have a complete kitchen. I was there one day and snuck up into the sanctuary, and it actually looks the same. I think they had my old curtains that I had made in there for a long time. It was kind of like going home again. It was fun for a while. I had asked one of the council members not to park behind the church in the open grassy area. And he wanted to know why. And I told him that was unmarked graves. He said, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that." And I explained to him the county would send people out that didn't have family or whatever and have them buried in cemeteries. So they no longer park on unmarked graves. And I think they probably did us a favor by taking our church. Back to the merger, I think we did a pretty good job of merging our two churches. It had its ups and downs. It had its back and forth talking to each other. The one thing of our merger that I feel was put aside and never honored was the one agreement was never to invest money into this building. It was agreed that rather than investing money, a new building would be made, a new church. The Synod had even met with the committee and offered to give us an architect and provide financing to build a new church. So I think that is the one thing of our merger that is not met. Other than that, I think the merger went well. When I was writing this up, I really got an appreciation of our pastors at the time. I remember Pastor Wood saying he had 7 council meetings a month with the 6 churches and a uni-council meeting. I didn't think he did 2 sermons and hospital visits, weddings. Any pastor that took over our 6 churches really had his hands full. And I don't think any of us realized what a minister that did our country churches, the amount of service he put in. And I think we all owe him a big thank you. So maybe the mergers, I know it came down to finances because it got too much for the churches to pay for their own buildings and take care of themselves. But I think we gave all the ministers a rest. If you look at Homer City's banner, we got committees together to make 2 different banners, one for each church. If you look at Homer City's banner, there is a dove on it that I named Dave. I named him Dave while I sewed him, and I thought he looked like a Dave. So if you ever happen to see our banner, you'll find Dave. And at the time, Yvonne Learn's son made me a stained glass Dave, and he still flies on my living room wall. We came by our Homer City name because I suggested it, and I guess everyone voted on it. Pastor Wood, during the merger, had 2 acronyms he used for the different committees. Pastor Bond reminded me the other day that the Northern Unit he called ABC. Our unit he called HOPE, which stood for Help Our People Evangelize. So when it came time to suggest a name for the church, that's the name I suggested. And obviously, they all accepted it. So that's how we come down to hope.
St. Paul wrote, "I thank my God every time I remember you, constantly praying with joy in every one of my prayers for all of you, because of your sharing in the gospel from the first day until now." His words are the greetings from my heart to all of you at this time of celebration. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you through the magic of technology as you observe a legacy of 200 and 150 years. Congratulations on this milestone of ministry that connects us with our Lutheran Christian ancestors of Brush Valley Lutheran and Trinity Lutheran congregations. For those of us who have not met, I am Pastor Sandra Jones, formerly Pastor Kennedy. I am currently serving as lead pastor of Good Hope Zion Lutheran Ministry in Oil City. It was my joy and privilege to serve Hope and New Life as pastor from July 1994 through December 2001. Serving with you was my first call after ordination. I was the first pastor called to the shared ministry and also the first female called to the congregations. What a fine match Bishop Paul Spring made so many years ago. We were all beginning something new and different, taking risks to leave what we knew as familiar for the sake of the gospel and for effective ministry in our communities. With grace and patience, we worshiped and learned and grew together. Working with you and living among you helped me to become a more confident person and a better pastor. Since those days, I have had many opportunities to speak about the benefits of shared ministry as a model for congregations in our synod and in the places where I currently serve. New Life and Hope are my touchstones. You set the standard and are always in my examples of how shared ministry can be faithful, effective, joyful, and fun. I thank you, and I thank God that you have continued to work together so beautifully. I marvel at the ways that you have grown in creative Christian outreach with Pastor Bond as your shepherd. I am certain that your ancestors of long ago would also be proud of who you are and all that you have done in the name of Jesus. Congratulations on your anniversary and best wishes for the years ahead. May the peace of Christ be with you until we meet again.
Hi, everybody. My name is Aloysius P. McScruffamunk, but you can just call me Al. I've been part of this congregation for, I don't know, maybe like the last 10 years or so, give or take or so. So I only know a little bit of the story of this congregation. I never got to live through a time back when there was a separate Brush Valley church and a separate Homer City church. I've only ever known these people as Hope. And most of my time here, I get to do things with the... Hi there. My name is Aloysius P. McScruffamunk. You could just call me Al. Most people do around here. Anyway, I've only gotten to be here as part of the congregation for, I don't know, maybe about the last, 10 years or so, I guess. So I only know a little bit of the history of this place. I've just been fascinated to learn the story of how Brush Valley started 200 years ago and how the church in Homer City started 150 years ago and the roots that run deep all around here. Of course, most of my time around here, I just get to do things with the kids like at Sunday school. In fact, you might have seen me in some of the videos that we make. Seems like during the school year, just about every week, I get into some kind of hijinks with Pastor Steve. And funny how it just seems like about every week, whatever I'm up to has something to do with our Bible story for the week. And then in the summer times, it seems like months go by at a time and nothing very interesting happens to me at all. That's funny. Anyway, like I say, I've only been here for a little bit of time, but what I am most impressed about here at Hope is how everybody's welcome. Whether you got roots that go back in your family all the way back to those early days of Brush Valley, or you got folks who've been here in Homer City for decades and decades, or you just walked in the door for the first time this Sunday, people here, but you're all welcoming. And you tell people that Jesus' love is for you too. Whether you're old or young, whether you've been here a long time or it's your first day, whether you don't even know what it means to be a Lutheran Christian or you've been singing a Mighty Fortress since you were in diapers, there's a place for you. I think that's what I'm most excited about. As exciting as it is to celebrate how God's been with you all for 200 years looking backwards, I'm excited to think about where God's leading us in the future. And I'm most excited to know that there's a place for all of us, old and young and kids and adults and even monkey puppets too. Thanks for letting me be a part of your celebration. Keep on being that hopeful people who share the good news of God's love with everybody. Bye, everybody.
south to north, west to east. There's a place at the feast for the last and the least, all welcomed in. God's party begins. Look at the faces around, love that embraces you now, sharing their flame, whispering your name. Hear it and know that you belong. This is the place to be found. Waters of grace pouring down. Come and rejoice, lift up your voice. Spirit, stir us up and let us join the song. Those we've loved, those unknown, gathered in around the throne, claimed in love, called your own. Tears wiped away as we hear Jesus say, look at the faces around, love that embraces you now, sharing their flame, whispering your name. Hear it and know that you belong. This is the place to be found. Waters of grace pouring down. Come and rejoice, lift up your voice. Spirit, stir us up and let us join the song. Distant past, yet to be in this room, cross the sea, find our home, God's family. Know that it's true. Holy are you. Look at the faces around, love that embraces you now, sharing their flame, whispering your name. Hear it and know that you belong. This is the place to be found. Waters of grace pouring down.
world with arms open, yeah. This is how we practice grace, every life and every face. Love like Jesus does with arms open, yeah. Good is stranger than evil. Your love always takes us by surprise. The lowly and outsiders find a welcome here before our eyes. Enemies are treated as friends as you make us all grace again. This is how we overcome. We're moving with the kingdom, reaching to the world with arms open, yeah. This is how we practice grace, every life and every face. Love like Jesus does with arms open, yeah. So we'll join in your movement, and we'll lose our lives to find them where the wounded wait for help. We'll offer up our hands to find them. We will love all like you taught us. We will seek as you first taught us. This is how we overcome. We're moving with the kingdom, reaching to the world with arms open, yeah. This is how we practice grace, every life and every face. Love like Jesus does with arms open, yeah. When it feels like hate is winning, when the world is cold and distant, you'll shine in us, make a difference. Your love will be our resistance. Make their heads turn on with passion, overcoming with compassion. This is how we overcome. We're moving with the kingdom, reaching to the world with arms open, yeah. This is how we practice grace, every life and every face. Love like Jesus does with arms open, yeah. This is how we overcome. We're moving with the kingdom, reaching to the world with arms open, yeah. This is how we practice grace, every life and every face. Love like Jesus does with arms open, yeah. go, still stumbling. We've come here to you. Waiting for signposts, we pinned our hopes on this. Your promise, grace will make us new. You are here in the presence of the Spirit, all around, pouring down. Loud and clear, coming close so you can hear it. You are claimed. Call my name, it's true. Praying, crossing boundaries, used to staying safe, still hiding inside our well-worn rules. Mercy is courageous. It takes the chance to act. So orient our anxious hearts on you. You are here, sent to serve our neighbors out the door. This is your great command. Free from fear, to love and against our neighbor. Walk beside, open eyes will hand. So welcome to the movement. Tired of standing still, no ignoring, and no more walking by. Washed with love and water, fed with bread and grace. We are learning to see through Jesus' eyes. You are here, your power makes us able. Take the time, cross all lines to be brave. Bring us here, gathered at your table. From these walls, share with all what you be. More than talk, walk the walk, so the world can trace the path of grace. Take the frontier, let's see it clear. You are here. I was sure I knew where the lines were. Who's out, who's in, then you begin to erase. Reaching past to the least and to the last. Old walls come down and faith is found. This is grace. And the hardest part is the courage to say God is doing a new thing before our eyes. Open this heart to surprise. Thought I knew inside my old view who could belong. I've sung that old song before. Now I turn, there's a new verse yet to learn, and from your side you've opened wide the door. And the hardest part is the courage to say God is doing a new thing before our eyes. Open this heart to surprise. Haven't you heard? There are new words. Shout out that God's moving spirits are stirred. Come out of your grave, love will make you brave to sing. Come out of your grave, love will make you brave to sing.
So, if all of that is how we got here, then where do we go from here? As the last 200 years' worth of history reminds us, we have often been like our ancestor in the faith Jacob, often struggling with old and new identities, occasionally being given a new name, and wrestling with God while God keeps proving faithful and leading us onward. Maybe all we really know about where we go from here is that we keep going where that same God is leading us. Most definitely out the doors into the world, most definitely as we are, blessed and broken at the same time. And like the women running from the tomb on Easter morning with the news that Christ is risen, sent out into the world, loving our neighbors and serving our community. And like the familiar words of the prayer we often share in evening prayer, we believe that God has called us to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. And we trust that God will go with us and give us good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that God's hand is leading us and God's love is supporting us. And that is enough to help us take the next step for the next day, the next year, the next century. Go in peace, people of hope, and serve the Lord.